Now, it is a real pleasure to welcome to the program for the first time Dr. Brad Rodu, who is a senior fellow of the Heartland Institute and professor of medicine at the University of Louisville, where he holds an endowed chair in tobacco harm reduction research. Dr. Rodu, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Good afternoon, Lars.
I want to ask you about this. Smokeless tobacco. Now, I will admit, I always tell my audience if I have a dog in the fight, I smoke a cigar now and then. I've never been a regular cigarette smoker. I mean, I might have smoked one or two cigarettes in my whole life. And I occasionally use smokeless tobacco. So there is an important admission that's been made by the American Cancer Society about the different kinds of tobacco. We know that the Surgeon General half a century ago said that smoking cigarettes is associated with cancer. But what have we just come to learn from the American Cancer Society about smokeless tobacco?
Well, Cancer Society researchers have just published a paper where they list the 17 causes of cancer that can be modified, that people can change. And it goes from cigarette smoking at the top, which everyone knows, all the way down to an obscure virus at the bottom, which only causes about 1,000 cases of cancer. What they left out was smokeless tobacco, that is dip and chew products. So this is the first time the Cancer Society has acknowledged that dip and chew products don't cause cancer.
Now, since you work in the field of tobacco harm reduction research, I want to ask you about this because we've talked about this on the program before. We've talked about the fact that vaping in the United States is treated under the laws, the regulations against smoking, in virtually the same way that cigarettes are, even though I'm told that vaping and those kinds of activities produce almost no risk of cancers, or at least is dramatically reduced. And in Great Britain, my understanding is that those other ways of consuming nicotine or consuming tobacco are actually encouraged if people will change from smoking cigarettes to something that's a less dangerous form. Whereas in the United States, health authorities tend to say we don't want any tobacco use in any form whatsoever. Are we cutting off a possible option for people to be able to get away from the very dangerous act of smoking and move to something much less dangerous, whether it's smokeless or vaping as a form of taking nicotine? And should we be doing that as a public health move?
Absolutely, Lars. The deal here is that it's the smoke that causes the cancers, heart disease, and strokes, and emphysema. And if you switch to a smoke-free delivery system, that is vapor or smokeless tobacco, you eliminate all the smoke and all those thousands of toxic chemicals that cause the disease. American health authorities are just very reluctant to consider the different risks provided by smoking tobacco and smoke-free tobacco on the very low end.
Why are they so resistant to this? I don't know what to compare it to. Usually I'll use a metaphor. But Dr. Rodu, if you could get, say, half the smokers in America who smoke cigarettes to switch over to one of these, wouldn't we save thousands of lives? Whereas the answer of saying, well, you should simply quit using all tobacco in all forms from now and forever. I know that the doctors would like us to do that, but for an awful lot of people, they simply can't. My in-laws right now are visiting a friend in the hospital who's tried any number of times to quit smoking. He can't do it, and now he realizes it's about to take his life. And yet, even with that threat hanging over him, he couldn't quit because it's a very powerful addiction. Would somebody like that have been better off if public health authorities were saying, well, if you can't stop smoking, go to vaping, go to to chew, to dip, to some other form, because we can at least dramatically change your health outlook. And if they won't do it, Dr. Rodu, do you have some insights as to why they won't do it?
Well, they have this vision, and it's called a tobacco-free society. And that's why they won't tolerate people switching to vastly safer alternatives. You know, we had this vision 100 years ago about an alcohol-free society.
Huh.
And that worked out really great, didn't it, Lars?
It sure did. And I guess just for some historical context, since you're in the business, Doc, how many thousands of years has tobacco been part of at least some human societies?
Well, that's interesting because it was discovered by Europeans when Columbus made his first voyage. The Native Americans were growing it all over. And within 100 years, tobacco was being used by literally every continent in the world. That's how fast it traveled. Nicotine and tobacco are very, very useful and beneficial agents for humans. Lots of humans love those products, and the key is to get them to use them in a far safer way.
And isn't that true of a lot of other products? I mean, for instance, doctor, aren't there doctors who routinely will advise patients a glass of wine with dinner, moderate use of alcohol is not only not necessarily harmful, but may in fact be beneficial. And yet used to excess, it's almost certain to kill you fairly quickly.
Absolutely. And I compare nicotine to my favorite drug, caffeine. Caffeine is used safely by millions of people all over the globe, but it's not used in a way that causes them any diseases. Nicotine is somewhat similar to caffeine. It provides mood elevation. It gives us a sense of well-being. It makes us alert when we're drowsy. It calms us when we're nervous. It's a great drug, but we have to recognize that we can use it more safely.
Well, Dr. Rodu, I'm glad to hear that because a few years ago I was talking about the vaping issue, and I asked a doctor, I said, if you could just take the nicotine without the smoke, how much would that reduce the harm? He said, maybe 95, 98%. He said it would be no more harmful to you than, say, the cup of coffee or the several cups of coffee that a lot of us enjoy, because coffee can be bad too. It can perhaps elevate your blood pressure and have some other bad effects, but it also has some good effects as well. If people want to see the best writing on this that's available at sort of the lay level, my level, Doc, where can they go? Where can my audience go?
Well, they can put this in their Amazon book search, For Smokers Only, How Smokeless Tobacco Can Save Your Life. That's a book I published and added a chapter recently on e-cigarettes. That's got common language, presents issues in a way that people can understand them and act on them.
Dr. Rodu, I'm up against the break, but I will put up other links on my website. Dr. Brad Rodu is a senior fellow at the Heartland Institute, and we'll be right back.